Hello, everyone. Welcome to Now Next Later for Monday, November 10th. Thank you for joining us live. We will be, as usual, recording and distributing this episode. So your questions will be in the chat. They'll also be in the episode. Don't hesitate to put them in there. I'll be watching it. And I want to welcome in our guest today. Sasha was not able to make it. I don't know if you're having the same issues with outages or travel or any kind of breaking news today, but sometimes that does take our Sasha and I away from the episodes. But today, Christy Soukhamneut, thank you so much for joining us and coming back to Now Next Later to talk about some of these current events.
Jeremy, always good to see you.
Right on. Well, thank you. Today's agenda has been evolving. Just so our audience knows, we wanted to actually bring, some of what we were hearing as hot topics and current events from the last week. We had a couple of events in the industry last week. I attended a LendingTree Summit in Charlotte. Christy attended the Texas MBA's 50 years of HUD celebration. 50, right? Not 60. 50. 60. 50.
And I think it's 60. Anyway.
Yeah, as I said it, I was like, I think it might be 60. So that event with the Texas MBA. And so that's one of the ways we bring you kind of what's innovative, what people are talking about, what we're hearing about. And so we thought we would do that. Then over the weekend, we also had social media breaking news, a pivotal tweet. We had FHFA director retweeting the president on a 50-year mortgage. So we decided we would head right for it. So we think we'll probably get through two topics today. Voice AI, the hot topic from last week, calls, UWM's earnings call mentioned 400,000 outbound calls on behalf of mortgage brokers. So obviously some product innovation, some product development there that Now Next Later wants to cover. And then we wouldn't be a product development show if we didn't also cover financial engineering like a 50-year mortgage. So we'll cover that for you as well. I can see Deb put in the chat. She already wants to hear about it, which is great. We appreciate that, and we'll cover that. So Christy, giving us that kind of lay of the land, let's start with Voice AI so we can end with the 50-year mortgage. What was your response? What was your reaction? What did you hear from your lender friends and your vendor friends last week and over the weekend just about what some of the breaking news, but also just the adoption of voice AI and outbound calling?
One of the most interesting things to me about the voice AI and the ability to use it as part of the origination process is where in the origination process do you put it? And for a lot of folks, they're very skeptical about we should be putting it at the very front end. We just did landmark legislation to get rid of trigger leads because customers don't want 180 phone calls. Mm-hmm. And do they really want a voice AI phone call to try to schedule a thing when we just got rid of the 180, calls they were getting from credit triggers? And so there's a lot of skepticism there that just says, hey, maybe this is not the right place. Maybe it's once you have a relationship, there's some follow-up, there's some things that you can do. Maybe there's some great work that you can do on the servicing side. So where do you want to start from was really a hot topic of conversation.
Yeah, that's a great frame up because that really separates the segments into explaining how, in one case, UWM could announce in their measurements that they were able to make those calls because likely there is a relationship there that's slightly different from a lead by online lead or other type of consumer data play. And so that's probably a really important distinction. I think the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, the idea of a robocall is really fascinating to me because I was so focused on the consumer experience of the AI itself for the last 3 months and listening to different companies and their examples of a call, listening to some of the demos and things like that, that it really didn't occur to me that it was an auto dialer when all's said and done, when you boil out.
Right, when you boil it down.
The fancy stuff. And so I had already been formulating a theory over the last few months on the types of calls these were contextually. And then this kind of really pushed me over the edge. So Michael Kelleher posted it on LinkedIn and I had to respond to it. But just to repeat it quickly here and get your reaction, the idea that it's a robocall actually kind of flies in the face of how all these companies have been creating this. they have been creating it to essentially be a fake human and sound as much like a human as possible. Give it a name, give it a personality. I've even heard some, you probably have too, that add in stutters and ums and different vocal cues to make it seem more like it's a person. And I came away from the LendingTree Summit scratching my head and thinking, why did we do that? Why wouldn't you just call it AI and tell the person, hey, I'm a virtual assistant. I'm actually calling on behalf of this institution or this individual. If you would like to use me, proceed. And I was actually starting to think of it kind of like English and Spanish. If you want Spanish, press 2. Otherwise, we're going forward in English. Hey, if you want to talk to your person, it might take a couple hours or even a day. But if you want to proceed with me, here's the value I can bring, and let's go. And actually give the consumer that choice or that power and sort of start to remove some of the regulatory risk by also then giving the consumer some power also. What is your reaction to some of these that you've heard and how you've been thinking about it over the last couple of weeks?
I don't think that those two things are diametrically opposed. I think they live in coexistence. We should always be telling people when they're talking to a human versus when they're talking to an AI, and they should have the choice in how they proceed. But that doesn't mean that that person is that you're still not hiring an AI to be a virtual, employee. And how you use and treat them and the things, the parameters that you put around them may look different, but they're still a virtual employee. And the reason I like for people to think about it that way is because you don't hire one employee to do everything in your company, right? It's not one employee that makes this outbound call that then does your disclosures, that then does your closing documents, that then does your post-closing, right?
Right.
They're different employees. So you have different AI that you employ as a person, as a fake person, if you will,
Yeah.
into each of those things. You still need to disclose that, right? We still need to have that truth and transparency, or we risk running afoul of lots of different regulations and consumer trust, right? Regardless of the regulation, I think we have an ethical and moral duty to tell people when we're using this technology and making sure that we're delivering the things that consumers really want, and we're enhancing that consumer experience by giving them the choice to do their mortgage application, with an AI bot named, I don't know, I'm going to make up something, Eric. So actually, I probably should have picked Jeremy. So an AI bot named Jeremy at 4 o'clock in the morning, because they were up thinking about their mortgage and scrolling around on Zillow, and now they wanted to do their application. So I think it's important that we give people the freedom and flexibility of choice, but always with full transparency.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It seems like we've operated for a long time out of a position that if we give the consumer choice, they'll go away or we'll lose, or there does seem to be a real concern that you can't give them choice and still win the deal. And I'm not sure why that's true, because almost every other industry has proven that wrong. Like the more visibility, transparency, and choice in other transactions wins. And in ours, we get nervous. And I'd like to really kind of hopefully help companies address the fact that we don't need to be scared of transparency and choice. That actually will win you more deals than it would lose you. Do you get a sense that it's so competitive out there that that's one of the driving fears, the primary driving fear, or is there something else holding us back?
That's a great question. I think it goes back to this know you, like you, trust you, right? If I don't know you and I don't like you and I don't trust you, I'm not going to do business with you.
Hmm.
And if there is somebody who's trying to give the appearance that this AI is me and you already know me, like me, trust me, then you're really, to me, coming across as deceptive. And
Hmm.
I would rather be transparent with that conversation, because I don't care how competitive it is out there. The one big differentiator that you have, Jeremy, your AI, or Jeremy, you as a person, is the service level that you provide and how you connect with people. Nobody else can replace that. And so you must look at that, think about that, and have it at all times, come from the consumer perspective.
I love that. I think that's a critical takeaway. this dates me and takes us back a little bit in the industry, but I think you'll appreciate it. It kind of reminded me when I was a young attorney in our industry, it was really important to boards of directors and C-suites to have a blog. And then you would ask, like, why do we need a blog? And they're like,
Why?
well,
Right.
everybody has a blog, so we need a blog. And then as an attorney, I would always say, like, what are we putting on it? You guys want a blog, but if it doesn't say anything, it's actually worse to put watered down language that's so sanitized that you're not even able to like really say anything. The whole idea is authenticity and transparency. So just having it can actually be worse if you don't use it in a way that actually makes sense to people. But if somebody else has it, we got to have it too. So they said blogs are cool and they said they have one. So we need one because we have to be on the cutting edge. And you could probably put two or three other examples between then and now in there, but it really feels to me like what you're saying is everybody seems to have this tool, so I have to have it too. And then it doesn't actually reflect your culture or what's going on or anything valuable to the consumer. And so the consumer feels that. They sense that inherently.
Well, and sometimes you put in tech and you think you're making it easier for somebody and you're actually making it much more difficult and you're lessening the value that you provide. So you need to assess it. Now, how often do we look at the cost to produce a loan?
Oh,
And
yeah.
we know that number keeps going up and up and up. Does it keep going up and up and up because we have to have the blog and we have to have this thing that the other person had and this thing? And we're trying to keep up with the Joneses instead of saying, hey, this is what we actually need to run our business. This is how we actually best can serve our consumer that chooses to do business with us. And now we create other ways of differentiation. You know, when was the last time we sat down with our strategy and said, okay, here's really our strategy. What are the things that we're doing that no longer serve us? And now where do we have gaps that we need to add in?
That's right. I think that it's critical to kind of run that value analysis, that what's in it for me, what's in it for them. I think if you're asking somebody to do something that benefits you as a company, you either have to tell them or make a trade. Hey, if you use this, it helps me, but I'll give you some economics in the deal, perhaps, because you're using it, right? Like if you want to be that committed to a tool because you know what it can do on your end, but you're not sure what it can do for the consumer, but you're trying to get them to use it, I think you gotta, honestly, I think you gotta bring them into the deal and say, hey, look, I've done the analysis. That strategy that you're talking about, I've looked across this. This is really meaningful to me. It's not going to be that meaningful to you. So I'm actually just going to ask you to use it for 10 basis points or for closing cost credit or for something, because otherwise you should only roll out tools that matter to your customer. And if your customer is a loan officer, then you do have that extra step to think about. I'm delivering a tool to my loan officers because that's who I recruit, that's who I serve, that's who, brings in the business for our firm. Okay, great. But then think about what their customers, how their customers going to react. And you have to have an answer for that. I don't think you can just, in today's market, ask people to adopt something that's good for you and not them.
I would totally agree. They see past that in all kinds of ways. And there are lots of companies. You know, one of the challenges and things that I tell people to look at is don't just look in our industry at what's happening. Look in other industries because that will tell you and give you a little bit of some insight into what might work for you. You don't have to start from scratch and rebuild the wheel. You can see what somebody else did and how it worked and then figure out how you adapt it.
Yeah, excellent. So it sounds like our final thought, our bottom line is if you adopt voice AI, if you don't adopt voice AI, we're not telling you one or the other. What we're saying is this is a tool. Some people are using it and some people are using it very effectively. But if it doesn't fit or make sense into how you explain your process, how you execute your process, and then ultimately how you measure the return in your process, don't feel like you have to. But a lot of people are, especially those that have a relationship. Servicers are going to use this. It sounds like wholesale can really use this because there's an existing relationship there and they're making the call on behalf of an expert or in advance of an expert. Are you considering transacting? Would you like to talk to a human? And if you're going directly to leads without that relationship, you got to really think about the regulatory issues, but you also have to really think about like what's going to be the reception on this, because if I roll it out and nobody uses it or they categorically reject it, then it was a real waste of our time and money. So make sure you do that analysis.
Good summary there. So we're ready to talk about a 50-year mortgage.
Of course, we gave ourselves 15 minutes here, the bottom half of our episode. President Trump, sometimes I call it Twitter. It's, I think, X. There's a Truth Social out there. So a photo was posted from the president's account showing FDR created the 30-year mortgage. We've all probably seen the image by now. President Trump, 50-year mortgage, and retweeted by Bill Pulte, the executive director of FHFA. And that sparked a lot of commentary on what's going on. Are we actually doing the 50-year mortgage? Can Fannie and Freddie even do the 50-year mortgage? And then a whole bunch of influencers and thought leaders and our friends and colleagues posted on their thoughts on it. So having a few days to think about it now and all these different kind of conversations this morning, can you give us kind of your reaction when you first heard about it and what you're thinking on the 50-year mortgage as a concept first and foremost today?
Well, let's start with the problem we're trying to solve is affordability, right? We know we have an affordability crisis. It is exacerbated by so many things. Sitting here in Texas and looking at how much my homeowner's insurance went up, how much my taxes went up, there are things beyond just the loan itself that we have to look at from an affordability standpoint. So I want to applaud anybody and everybody who is sitting in a room and brainstorming different ways that we can attack this problem. Because if the answer was easy, we would have already solved it. So get every idea out on the table. Not every idea is going to be a good idea. This concept of a 50-year mortgage is, I'm not sure, going to hit the mark. Because a lot of the analysis that some of our friends and thought leaders in the industry have posted is, well, if you have a 30-year loan and it's at 6%, and now you have a 50-year loan and it's at 6%, then here's the difference in your payment. And then they're questioning, like, is that enough to justify this additional amount of interest? Well, I think that calculation is a little off, because we have 15-year loans today versus 30-year loans, and there is a rate differential there. So let's just assume the same rate differential from a 15 to a 30 is going to be from a 30 to a 50. Maybe it'll be even higher because we don't know the market acceptance of this. So now you're going to do that. If you add in that same differential, the difference in payment is literally like, hey, let me go grab a Starbucks and, a McMuffin to And if that's all I'm saving, am I really impacting affordability? And again, not that we shouldn't be looking at these things and, running this to ground and saying, is this something we should do? But now come up with, instead of trashing their idea, come up with another idea.
I love that. I think I'm going to start using the cost differential as the cost of avocado toast, since as a first-time homebuyer, it was thrown in my face for so long that I was eating too much avocado toast. Now I can flip it and make it the cost differential of a 50-year mortgage. But you're exactly right. The math on this is so critical to how it gets understood, accepted, or considered. And there are so many variables. One of the things that is always made innovation in mortgage challenging is the complexity of pricing. I mean, that has actually it has been a problem for our industry to explain to real estate agents, nevertheless consumers, when we're trying to tell them how we price things. And there's all these different levers and you're doing all these, plus ups and reductions based on all these different personalized characteristics. So now adding this into the mix without a market and trying to know for sure whether it would win out, I think you're right, is really tough. I also felt, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, if you had to think about something that would impact affordability, like if you had a magic wand, what would you throw into the mix for this administration to think about?
So my biggest passion project on affordability is, instead of focusing on the price of the house, we need to focus more on the pre-approval amount of our first-time home buyers, because that's actually what they want to be eligible for over, and let's use 30 years in this case. So if I go to my loan officer, we sit down and run all my accounts, and it looks like I have $400,000 of, let's call that, buying power in the market. Telling me that I need to find a $400,000 house is actually not a one-to-one assumption on my part, Jeremy Potter. I don't care what the house is worth. What do I care about? A vision, a path where I earn $400,000 of equity in an asset over a certain horizon, given the schedule. What are my monthly payments? What's principal? What's interest? And can I expect that if I do what I'm supposed to do at the end of a certain time period, in this case, 30 years, I'll have $400,000 back or more if it goes
Well,
up three,
hopefully more, right? Because it's
hopefully more. But
supposed to be generational wealth.
and even if it doesn't approve, though, I'm saying like I've got this concept that it might go up. It's likely it could go down, but I don't really think it's going to go down below zero, right? It's going to, and so I have this image. So let's even throw in some appreciation in there, 3 or 4%. Okay, now I'm saying I have $400,000 of buying power. Maybe I hope for $550,000 at the end of 30 years. What I'm suggesting to Fannie and Freddie is we need to create a market where if the house is worth $550,000 to begin with, we still let that person in at 400 and we create an asset class where investors, companies, individuals have a shared equity tranche that they can buy shares in as well. And so instead of Wall Street coming and buying your neighborhood the way we've always heard about it, because Wall Street feels like they have to buy the whole house and rent it out to make a return, what I'm saying is no, no, no. We go to Wall Street and we say, you need to buy 10% of every house. And that's your real estate exposure. That's our comfortable private capital secondary market, alleviating some of the risk. And our first-time home buyers don't have to stretch themselves. They don't have to spend every last penny. They get to look at a house and go, $500,000 house, I'll take 400,000 of that 500,000. And now they're still in at their credible, qualified, pre-approved amount. We haven't changed their expectations of what they can do, earn, or pay back. And we've created a market where other investors get the exposure they want in a very solid asset class. So for me, I would be
I love
pushing
it.
on shared equity. I would be pushing on shared equity to allow first-time homebuyers to win. The other thing is, I actually believe Fannie and Freddie and the PMIs would really like it because it is private capital taking a side-by-side role in the deal, which is what we all want. We want private capital playing a role in the deal and taking some of that risk right alongside our first-time home buyers and our housing market. And that to me is much more exciting. And I get more passionate about it than just extending out the term to try to get to a monthly payment amount.
Well, one, you're clearly passionate, and two, this is a really good idea. And
Oh,
I'll
thanks.
I'll extend it, and kind of tack onto it. Something that I had been working on for close to a year is how do we get employers to do that?
Yes.
And you get a lot of employers that because it's good for them, it's good for the community, it's good for whatever, they donate and put money into the community for affordable housing. And
Mm-hmm.
what if instead of just donating that directly to the community and whether or not the impacts are there, again, depends on the program and all the amount of money and whatever. What if they did that as an employee benefit that you earned out over time, just like you do your 401k? There's a vesting period, there's a whatever. You don't have payments on that. They get a portion of the appreciation, which they could always get, right? Like these are some cool ideas that are newer. And you have to explain it to people. You have to
Yeah.
say, hey, well, here's where this idea came from, and here's where we're seeing it possibly work. And you're thinking along the same things along with private capital. Maybe that even puts some inventory back into the market because people who had owned it and had to own the whole thing, when you own a whole asset and you rent it out as this house in this case, you have somebody in there who it's not their home,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's their house versus their home. And the care and love and maintenance is just not the same. Just talk to any Airbnb owner
Mm-hmm.
that you get there. So now you get to have a person in there that you're sharing this
Yeah.
risk with, but they care about it in a way that is more deeply meaningful, and they are more likely to take care of that asset. So you probably have a better return.
Yeah, I think there's probably some people who work at startups or work at other types of companies that get equity in the company who still treat it like a job and don't think about it. But a lot of people, including me, who have worked at those companies where I got equity or shares, I felt like it was my company, right? I was flying the flag right alongside everybody else in a slightly different way than when it's just your compensation, so to speak. And I think that's kind of where we're headed. Is we're headed to like, I need flexibility, I need affordability options, all the themes and things, trends that you were talking about. And now we're all kind of in this from a return perspective and asset management perspective together, instead of competing for the same houses at the same time. It's like, well, no, now my employer and or a fund is actually wants to be with me. I'm actually a good partner. People are looking at me as a potential co-investor rather than as a competition or as somebody else. So I think the other thing that comes up for me with the employers is we've all kind of run at employer affiliate agreements at some point. Everybody in the mortgage industry wants to get in there to do those big employers and be on their HR site as a mortgage deal, as a way to try to get that deal early, right? And the way I was thinking about it here is not just the talent acquisition that you were talking about, but these companies have to put a small portion of their cash to work in safe investments. They have bonds themselves. They have these like lower risk. It might not be the whole portfolio, right? They do high risk, medium risk, and low risk with their cash, just like 401ks do, and just like the rest of us do. And so now we get to go to the corporates and say, to your point, hey, you were going to donate some money to, let's call it Habitat for Humanity. Great organization, building a ton of houses for people. It's amazing. You're going to do that anyway. Can we carve out some of that money and get it in this fund? Can we get it working on behalf of your customers? Pension funds. How often have you and I been asked, how do we get these first responders, teachers, public
Great.
servants? How do we get them a mortgage they can afford in the place, the community where they actually work? Save them the commute from 2 hours away to be able to afford it. Well, now those pension funds can actually put money to work directly for their constituents in houses that teachers and firefighters actually live in. Right now, they're buying generic RMBS with all their money. These big pension funds, they just buy RMBS. Well, we won't ask them to switch 100% of that, but could you carve off some of that and put it to work over here? And then my last constituent is parents. We know 65% of first-time homebuyers are getting some amount of their down payment from friends and family, mostly parents, but also grandparents and uncle. And that money gets kind of disappeared, for lack of a better word. It just kind of goes into the home. It acts as equity. It's not a terrible thing because usually the kids are getting equity out of it. Maybe they got down to 20% down, 80 LTV, great. But in this way, it would give parents and grandparents optionality to say, maybe I just do it the old-fashioned way, gift letter, great. But maybe I put it in this fund, and then that fund actually makes the investment gives the money to the child's down payment. And now we actually have like scale that we need. It's an actual vehicle that you can designate to be on behalf. So we have startups working on this. So I do think it will happen, but I think Fannie and Freddie would be wise to take a look at things like that, where it isn't as crazy as it used to be. It isn't as unclear to consumers as it used to be, because they've now been conditioned to see all of these other apps and all of these other platforms give them visibility and control. You were talking about looking in other places. We know that other financial services, rental platforms, buying and selling platforms, content creator platforms have all given them visibility. Here's what the asset is. How much do you want of it? Crypto, here's the asset. Do you want to buy a 0.001% of a coin? You can. So I do think our first-time home buyers get it more than maybe the industry recognizes.
I would agree with you. I mean, think about, as you know, when I got married, you had a gift registry and
Yeah.
you got 13 sets of china and 12 glass bowls and some crystal and whatever it is you registered for. And now you have folks getting married and they're putting out GoFundMe accounts to help fund their down payment, to help pay for their wedding, to pay for their
Mhm.
honeymoon, whatever that looks like. It looked very different today. They're using these types of opportunities in new and unique ways, at least from what it was when we were in that same position. And we should be open to that, right? We should continue to compound and build on that and use our regulatory knowledge, our experiential knowledge of where things might have gone wrong in the past and things we should look out for to create things that are new and better based on the ideas that we're seeing both in other industries and from the younger generation.
I love that. That is a great vision because it ties back to what you said originally. Hey, we're in a room, we're brainstorming ideas on this problem of affordability. Someone, very high profile, someone threw out the 50-year mortgage. Great. What else you got? What else can we put next to it? Let's actually create some creative, positive competition. May the best idea win. And get these things in front of FHFA and in front of the GSEs and say, hey, good, you're considering that? Consider this too. Now you have some things to put on a whiteboard, put in a spreadsheet, compare with each other, and let's make the one of these ideas happen, whichever one is the best one for the industry.
Or maybe a couple. Let's put a couple in there. You
Yeah.
don't know which one's going to be the winner. We can make some small bets. So I would encourage everybody that is either watching us live or watching this later, or even just hears about it, because this is going to be such a great episode. People are going to be hearing and talking about it, that get with whatever your favorite industry organization group is. CHLA, MBA, TMC, Lenders One, AIM, whoever it is, they all have advocacy arms. Get your ideas to those people because they have the contacts and the relationships that they're going to be able to funnel this up to the right people so that it gets heard. So come up with one idea. Doesn't
That's
even have
right.
to be a good idea. Just come up with one idea and get it to the advocacy person in your favorite industry organization. That's my challenge to everybody today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We always love a challenge on Now Next Later. That was the part of the reason we exist as a show. So take that challenge, run with it, reach out to Christy, reach out to me. We definitely want to keep talking about these ideas on the show too. So if you have one you want to discuss on the show, reach out. We'll do that, and we'll make this a spot where we can continue to answer that challenge as well. So Christy, thanks again for joining us on Now Next Later. We'll definitely have you back to talk about this again
Thanks,
soon.
Jeremy. I appreciate you letting me hang out with you today.
Of course, my pleasure. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again next week.